Brittney Archie, and I am a second-year law student at Thurgood Marshall School of Law. I'm here today to interview Attorney Bob Bennett regarding professional misconduct and ethical issues within the practice of law. And I'm going to let Attorney Bob Bennett introduce himself before we begin his interview process.
Thank you, Brittney. I want to first say hello to the students and faculty at Thurgood Marshall, and thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to speak on these issues that are very important. I wanted to give a little bit of background as to why I became an attorney. And when I was in high school in scenic Amarillo, Texas, I had a speech professor who gave us an assignment to play certain roles in certain cases. These legal cases inspired me to decide to go to law school, and so when I was 16 or 17, I decided to do that. My legal career has followed a kind of unusual path in that when I was in law school, I clerked for both the Harris County District Attorney's Office and the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Texas. I then went to work as a federal trial attorney in Washington, D.C. and in Chicago. And while in Chicago, I was offered a position with the United States Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office in San Antonio, Texas. So on the one hand, I could stay up in cold, wintry, very dark Chicago, or I could come to sunny San Antonio. So that wasn't much of a choice. And so I came to San Antonio and was with the U.S. Attorney's Office for several years. I then left that office, and I had a family friend who offered me a position with the Coca-Cola bottling company in Ciudad de Guatemala in Central America. And so I worked there for about a year, and then I finally returned to Houston and have been in Houston ever since. And my practice, as I like to say, now focuses on attorneys, judges, and students who are usually into sex, drugs, or rock and roll, or combination thereof, and have professional licensing issues. So this topic of ethics and grievances is very dear to my heart.
Hello. How does your law practice differ from other Texas attorneys?
The question is how my practice is different, and it is different because I represent mainly professionals who have licensing issues and are confronted with complaints or investigations. And I try to make sure that those who are being investigated or who have a complaint filed against them understand fully the consequences and help them put on the very best defense to their professional license.
When most law students graduate from law school, what have you learned after your 45 years of practice is something that these recent graduates do not understand about the grievance system and the ethical practice in Texas?
I know that students at TSU and other law schools take professional responsibility, but I think the procedure and the practicality may not be emphasized as much as it should be. For instance, we're the only state in the union that allows an attorney to have a jury trial. Now, I generally don't favor and don't recommend a jury trial, but that is possible when you're trying to defend your license. Additionally, the law student needs to know that there is a difference between an evidentiary hearing and a jury trial, and there's pluses and minuses for both of those. And finally, what the ethical situation that arises the most is failure to communicate. And that is an area that is a point that needs to be emphasized time and time again of the importance of the law student or the lawyer-to-be or the lawyer to communicate with the client.
How would you advise law students and recent graduates about the new changes of the grievance system, and what should they be on guard about?
In 2017, the State Bar of Texas was up for sunset review, and as part of that review, senators looked at how many complaints in the last decade had been filed against attorneys. And through the last decade, the last 10 years, almost 7,000 complaints were filed every year. So the number of complaints remained the same. The number of complaints remained the same, but the number of attorneys greatly increased. and the senators raised a question as to why more complaints are not being processed. And so we had a change in the law that will affect attorneys coming out of law school. We now have what's called an ombudsman who is charged with the responsibility of helping the public file grievances against attorneys. So that's the first major change that you're going to have to face now that you are a graduate of law school in 2018. Second, there's more investigative powers invested with the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, and that is the prosecutor for the Commission for Lawyer Discipline. And so these are important changes that put the attorney and the law student at risk. And I keep repeating the same point, the importance of communication with your client. And today with email, with programs like My Case, where the client has a portal to his own case, I think that's important. And of course, telephone, email, mailing, all that is important to keep the client apprised and informed of the case.
You represent attorneys and law students before the Texas Board of Law Examiners. How does your knowledge of professional responsibility and ethics guide you in the representation of these groups?
When a law student receives a letter from the Texas Board of Law Examiners, many times there's a phrase or a clause within that letter saying that there's been a preliminary determination that the person lacks good moral character or fitness to practice law. Once that letter is received, it's important for the law student to respond to that letter. A failure to respond may mean you're not going to be licensed in the state of Texas. Additionally, as you have learned in law school, it's always better to have representation in any matter. And many law students make the mistake of believing that they can just call up the board, talk to them, and this matter will get resolved. Unfortunately, if there's an issue of alcohol, criminal activity, civil judgments, mental disease, if there's some problem like that, it's going to require much more than just a phone call. So I generally think that most law students don't realize the seriousness of what the Board of Law Examiners does, and they subsequently don't take it as seriously as they should. I recommend always talking to an attorney who's had experience, or at least talking to any attorney who may be able to offer help with the Board of Law Examiners.
Mr. Bennett, you are one of the few attorneys in the United States who represents doctors, international medical students before the United States Medical Licensing Secretariat, also the National Board of Medical Examiners, and the Evaluation Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. In your representation of these clients, what ethical and professional issues have come about?
When I've represented medical students and also doctors before the USMLE Secretariat, or ECFMG, these are boards that are in charge with giving exams to medical students from all over the world. And too many times the medical students do not understand that simply asking a question about the exam is a violation and can lead to a preliminary determination that they've engaged in irregular behavior. If you have a finding of irregular behavior for the medical student, that means that the file that's maintained by USMLG will continue to have that document in it. Additionally, that document will be sent to the National Data Bank, and any type of program you apply to will have that letter, and that could keep you from being admitted into the program and ultimately keep you from getting a residency in a state in the United States.
The president of the State Bar of Texas appointed you this year to the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. How does this program assist you and enhance you to help and educate judges, lawyers, and other law personnel about professional responsibility and ethics?
I was very honored by the President of the State Bar of Texas to appoint me to the TLAP, Texas Lawyers Program, that deals with problems that an attorney or a law student or a judge has with addictive behavior, mental issues, or other problems that makes the attorney not as complete and doesn't do as good a job as he possibly can. TLAP is a program that the State Bar funds, but TLAP is separate from the State Bar. Everything that flows or is given or provided to TLAP is completely confidential, and so if you do call them, it'll be something that will stay with them. They will provide you resources such as groups that meet in cities throughout the United States and cities in Houston. Lawyers Concerned About Lawyers is a group that meets here in Houston, and if you have some type of addictive behavior, that support group will help you. Additionally, there are interventions and also funds that can be made available so that the attorney or the law student or the judge can address these issues. And so I'm very honored to be appointed to that committee and look forward to working with the committee and also with attorneys to address these concerns.
I would like to just say thank you so much, Mr. Bennett, for coming out and having this interview with us. It is super important professional responsibility, and as my professor has stated many times, we kind of overlook it, and I'm very grateful that Mr. Bennett took out time today to come and explain that to us as 2L students who are arising to be lawyers and wanting to be the best attorneys that we can be. Thank you.
Well, I enjoyed doing it, and thank you very much for asking.